Today, we're picking up a mostly stock 1953 Chevy 3100 to do some performance upgrades. We're adding a new intake and exhaust manifolds and dual single-barrel Rochester carbs. Then we're converting the old drum brakes to discs and finally fitting it with modern yet vintage-looking wheels and tires. It's all today here on Truck Tech.
Hey guys, welcome to Truck Tech. Now you may or may not know Power Nation is based in Nashville, Tennessee. And one thing's for certain, Nashville lives up to its name as Music City, USA. The whole city is filled with world-famous music venues that feature everything from the biggest stars in music to the aspiring artist who just got off the bus. Everybody comes to town with similar dreams. Whether it's to be able to play the Grand Ole Opry or make it up on the stage at the legendary Ryman Auditorium, or possibly one day making it into the Country Music Hall of Fame. Even songwriters have been telling us what we already know. Your truck can mean a lot more to you than just a way to get around.
My wife is gone, my heart is broke. She took my pickup truck. Without my truck, I'm finding out I just ain't got no love. My old dog Blue won't go with me, he doesn't like to walk. And when I shuffle down the street, the folks all laugh and talk.
Now, Krista's old 53 isn't just a video prop. It has a home at Fontanelle, which is just north of Nashville. And it sits on display 7 days a week for the tourists to check out that have come to Fontanelle. And if that name sounds familiar, it may be because it used to be Barbara Mandrell's mansion and estate. But nowadays, it's Nashville's premier outdoor music venue, featuring the biggest names from a variety of different music genres. But it's not just music. Every Thursday, from May to September, they host a weekly car show and cruise-in, packed with everything from classic antiques to late-model muscle. Now, Krista's truck was actually a surprise gift from her obviously cool husband, Mark Oswald. Now, this truck is a driver, but it rides and runs a little rough sometimes. After all, it is a 1953. And while it looks good, it's essentially a stock pickup truck. But Krista's got some plans to make things better.
The 53 has kind of taken a life of its own out at Fontanelle. It just has kind of become the mascot. It's on mugs at the Fontanelle gift shop, it's on t-shirts, and it just kind of became this icon out here. But unfortunately, it's been out in the rain, the cold, the sleet, the hail, you name it. So my goal is for it to not sit anymore. I want that thing to drive and to take it everywhere and bring it to the Fontanelle car shows every Thursday night. And the only disappointment for me is not having my own vehicle to drive out here. So Mark and I said, man, we got to get this thing running. And my goal is, you know, within the next month or so to be pulling in with the 53.
Then she handed over the keys to her pride and joy so we could put a few test miles on this thing and come up with a solid plan for upgrades.
Now, after putting a few miles on our 53, we've got it back here in the shop. Now, even though this is a good, solid running truck, it could use a little help. The brakes definitely need an upgrade, along with throwing a few performance parts at this old inline 6. But first, we've got something cool for you to check out.
Now, on modern vehicles, ignition timing changes are all digital, controlled by a computer. And before that, vacuum and mechanical advance happened inside the distributor. But 60 or so years ago, when this truck was built, the vacuum advance actually moves the entire distributor. Fire this thing up, Jeremy. Cool. That's not something you see every day. Now, our 53 originally came with a 216. We know it was swapped out somewhere along the lines for a 235 because we ran the casting numbers. And with that information, we went to Classic Parts of America and picked up both aesthetic and performance-based upgrades. We picked up an Offenhauser cast aluminum fin valve cover, Fenton cast iron headers, an Offenhauser intake manifold, and dual carb setup, complete with throttle linkage. For ignition, well, we went to AutoZone and picked up a factory replacement distributor. But we are going to swap out the mechanical points for a Pertronix Igniter 2 electronic ignition upgrade, both for reliability and to cut down on maintenance. We also picked up a flamethrower coil and plug wire set. And we'll light things off with some E3 Diamond Fire spark plugs.
After the break, we'll get all our engine upgrades installed and fire this thing off. And later, it's today's wheels and tires with yesterday's look. Stay tuned.
Hey guys, welcome back to Truck Tech. Well, we're in the middle of throwing some hop-up parts at our 1953 Chevy and freshening up the paint on the side of our 6-cylinder block. Now, the stock stamped steel valve cover is in good condition, but we're going to try to dress this engine up so it's going to get replaced. And that means replacing some of the hardware that holds the rocker shaft in place. These studs replace the bolts and convert the perimeter style valve cover hold down to a center bolt style. Now, this finned cast aluminum valve cover does have a cool look, but it also interferes with the thermostat housing a little bit, so it's going to need a little bit of notching. To create the clearance we need, Jeremy started out with an 80 grit sanding disc. Once he had the shape he wanted, he just stepped it down from a coarse scuffing pad to a fine scuffing pad that we picked up from Industrial Depot. This process reduces the severity of the scratches until they can be polished out with a buffing wheel and some compound. Now, the dual carb manifold we picked up from Classic Parts has a provision for an intake manifold heater. There's two reasons for that. One, it helps with cold startups, which is especially important in northern states. But there's also debate that it's necessary even in warmer climates. They say without it, you end up with a cold intake manifold and fuel can puddle on the walls of the manifold, causing acceleration problems. But there's also guys that run without it and say they don't have any issues. So we're going to opt for a cleaner looking engine bay and try going without it. If we've got drivability problems, we'll just remove our block off plate and add the heater. Now, these heater passages are closed off, but we're going to install our homemade block off plate anyway to prevent any small creatures from setting up shop in here. Now, to make sure the gaskets stay in place, or give them a good shot anyway, we're using plenty of Loctite gasket tack. Now, the reason you want the gaskets to stay in place on their own is because wrestling the intake and exhaust manifolds into position is definitely a two-person job and requires at least 5 arms. And these intake and exhaust manifolds come from different manufacturers, so getting the flange bolts to line up and hold things down correctly can take a little bit of work. All right, getting somewhere.
Hold it in place anyway.
Yep. Man, these fasteners leave a little to be desired. I'm gonna snug that one down too, until we get the rest of them started in position. And with the intake bolted down, we can get to work installing our 2 1-barrel Rochester carburetors.
It looks like that support brace is going to be in our way. Get that off and modify that a little later.
And to make sure we don't have to fish any small parts out of the intake manifold, we're covering up the ports with a little bit of tape. With our new carbs and gaskets bolted in place, we can convert our single feed fuel line to a dual feed setup.
Dual carbs look pretty cool.
Now this T-fitting and the fuel lines were supplied in the kit. We just had to bend them up to fit our particular application. And with that finished up, we can move over to the passenger side of the engine block. And to make sure it looks as good as the other side, we're taking the same approach of freshening up the block with a nice coat of orange paint. Now we left the old spark plugs in place so we didn't have to mask off the spark plug holes before we reinstalled our new ones.
Not too tight, give it just a good snug.
Now with our distributor upgraded with Pertronix parts, we can reinstall it into the block. Now before removing the original distributor, Jeremy marked the location of the rotor to make sure the new one went back in the same exact position. We can fine tune the timing with a timing light once we get this thing up and running. And we're also installing a flamethrower coil, which will mount to the side of the cylinder head. Then we cut our plug wires to length, crimped on the terminals, and made the connections in between the plugs, coil, and distributor cap, making sure to put things back in the correct firing order.
Now that we've got all our new parts put on our 235, along with this pretty cool looking beehive oil filter we picked up from Classic, it's time to see if we can bring this thing back to life. That sounds pretty cool to be an old 6-cylinder. I guess the only thing left for us to do is get our exhaust put on it. We can head down the road.
When we come back, we'll get the drum brakes swapped out for discs. Stick around.
All right, we've got disc brakes. Hey guys, welcome back to Truck Tech and the disc brake conversion on our Chevy 3100. And the first step in this process is to remove all of our old drum brake hardware, and most of it will get thrown away, but we are going to reuse our factory spindle.
Now, like Jeremy mentioned earlier, the brakes on our old Chevy 3100 could use a little bit of help. They were working, but they could use some adjustments at the very least. But we figured we'd skip that and bring the truck into this century with the help of a disc brake conversion kit that we sourced from Classic Parts of America. Now, we opted for their 6-lug slotted and drilled rotors. The kit also includes wheel spacers, press-in studs, calipers already loaded with hardware and brake pads, new flex lines, mounting brackets, spindle hardware, and a vacuum brake booster, master cylinder, and proportioning valve assembly already set up for a front disc brake swap. We also picked up one of their spindle roller bearing conversion kits to replace the factory ball bearings.
Now with everything removed and cleaned, the next step will be installing our caliper bracket. Now we decided to use our factory hubs since they're not typically a wear item. Now you could opt for new ones, but we decided to go this route and save a few bucks. This truck came with ball bearings, which was common for the time, but as you can see, these bearings have a much larger contact area, which make them a lot more durable. And another reason we went with these tapered rollers is because we're going to upgrade to larger wheels and tires, which will put a lot more stress on our bearings.
To set the bearing preload, go ahead and tighten down the spindle nut to make sure the bearings are fully seated. Then check to make sure all free play is removed, and tighten down the spindle nut until there's just slight drag on the rotor, making sure that the castellated nut lines up with a hole in the spindle. Then stab it with a cotter pin, you're pretty much done.
Be sure that you get a piece of pipe that matches that outer diameter of your dust cover. That way you don't damage it when you go to put it on. The next step is to install our caliper, which is pretty straightforward, just a couple of bolts. One thing to be sure of is that your bleeder screw is pointing up. If it's not, you'll get air trapped in the system and probably never get a good pedal. Now, I like to pre-install the brake line on the caliper off the truck because it makes installing to the factory line that much easier. last step is to put in your retainer clip so your lines aren't bouncing all over the place. All right, we've got disc brakes. Hey guys, welcome back to Truck Tech. Now for wheels for our 53 Chevy truck, we decided to go with American Racing Ansen Sprints that we picked up from Summit Racing. They're a 17x8 one-piece polished design. And since Krista already liked the looks of this truck so much, we decided to just go with a more modern version of the same wheel. And plus, since we upgraded to disc brakes, we had to go with a larger diameter wheel anyway. Now for tires, we decided to go with Continental's Extreme Contact DWSs. They're a high-performance, all-season tire, and this tread is designed for pretty awesome traction. But before we put on our wheels and tires, we need to address our new brake booster and master cylinder. It's pretty much a direct replacement of our original master cylinder. The only thing we had to do was extend our brake lines due to the added length of the booster. And with our new disc brakes up front, this setup would definitely help the performance of our brakes, along with a lot less pedal effort. Now, besides the good looks of these Continental tires, here's something else that's pretty cool. It's what they call their Total Confidence Plan, which offers 3 years flat tire roadside assistance upon registration of your new tires with them. Now, it can be tough picking out a set of rims for an old classic truck, but we think this old school hot rod style wheel fits the look we're going for. Well, there you go. We've got this Chevy making a little more power, much better brakes, and it looks a whole lot better too. The next step would be address some of these paint issues. That's for another show. Now, if you've got a 47 through 53 Chevy truck and you're looking for a new grille, Classic Parts of America has something you might want to check out. Now, depending on what year truck you have, these splash bars were painted different colors. Now, this grille can easily be disassembled and they can be painted any color of your choice. That way you can match your existing truck color with little effort. So check out Classic Parts of America. Now, if you've already gotten your hands on a 2015 Ford F-150 EcoBoost with a 2.7 or a 3.5 and you want to make it sound a little better, Magnaflow's got a new exhaust system you may want to take a look at. This bolt-on kit comes with everything you need. 2.5-inch mandrel bent stainless tubing, a single-end dual-out high-flow muffler, and to finish it off in the rear, 3.5-inch polished stainless tips. So if you're looking to wake up the exhaust system on your new truck, check out Magnaflow. Now, if you've added larger or wider wheels and tires to your truck and you're looking for a little more coverage, Bushwacker pocket-style fender flares will help keep the mud and rocks off the side of your truck. These flares add up to 2 inches more tire coverage, they're flexible and warp resistant, and they're easy to install because they require no drilling. So if you're looking to add more style along with a little more protection to your truck, check out Bushwacker. Hey guys, thanks for watching Truck Tech. See you next time.